the goal isn't coming at you fast enough is because every person you've seen accomplish the goal, you only see it the moment they accomplish it. And the reason that it hurts so much when people are like, must be nice, oh, that happened overnight, is because every time you fail, no one cares and no one sees. But when you finally win, people take notice.
Discredited.
But it's the only time they notice is when you actually win. And so to even further reinforce the point, the fact that everyone looks like an overnight success means that the 10 years where they sucked, no one saw. And so the fear that you have about people noticing the fact that you fail is ridiculous because they're barely going to notice when you succeed.
Yeah. I think this is one of the reasons why tracking the journey, this is something that Chris Bumstead's done very well. You know, he's had his videographer Calvin with him for forever, essentially. And, you know, tracking autoimmune disorders and depression, and now his wife's pregnant and having the kid, and I got to come back and do, all of that. I think one of the ways that you can at least lighten the load or bring it into land a little bit more effectively is to construct that story arc. You know, the story of you sleeping in the gym and the cars go over the top and it makes a loud noise and stuff. That is an important part of getting people to buy into where you are now by proving that you were there when the line was flat, or actually somehow managed to break through the floor and go negative a number of times. And I remember I was watching Maisie Williams. She was Arya Stark in Game of Thrones. And somebody asked her what she wished that she'd done differently. And, you know, I think she starts on that show and she's 11 or 12. And it's all of the most formative years of her life until she's 21 or something, into a decade of doing this show. And somebody asked her what she wished that she'd done differently. And she started journaling, I think, in season 5, and there's maybe 9 seasons or something. And she had no recollection of what happened in the beginning. And she really wanted that. And I think that if there's a regret that I have with this show, it's that we didn't track more of what was happening behind the scenes from the very beginning. Partly for everybody else to show just how much shit I went through to kind of prove that, but more so for me to remind myself of where it was. And I'm sure that, you know, there's a couple of photos, you know, the bed in the corner of the gym, like, fuck, I wish like I had that, and I wish I had this, and I wish I had another one. You know, if you'd had Caleb with you the whole time, imagine how fucking...
I'd be poor and broke.
Yeah.
I never would have made it out.
Probably in fucking hospital as well, from being on the back of a motorcycle. But yeah, I think it's important. I think it's important to track that journey for yourself and for other people. But it does piss me off. Like, I wish that human psychology wasn't so easily manipulated. Like, when you see that trick, when you see well, if you go 0 to hero, even if you go 0 to hero to 0 to back to hero again, like, as long as you can construct that narrative sufficiently strongly for people, you can just get other humans to buy into you. But it hasn't changed what you did. It's just changed the way that you presented it to people and the story that you told. So when you start to see things like that, I find it disenchanting because it reminds me how fickle crowd mentality is. And it's why Ethan Suplee, big Hollywood actor, weighed 500 pounds or something, and now he's 260, and he used to play fat guy funny roles, and now he plays jacked bearded biker dude roles. And the reason that his transformation is so fantastic is that you know him from before and you know him now, but the dude that just gets in shape, or that goes through the silent, quiet challenge and didn't track the progress, gets none of the accolade despite going through all or maybe even more of the challenge.
So much to unpack. I'd say one of the strongest mental frames that has gotten me through my hardest times is thinking this will be the story that I will one day tell. And that means the harder it is, the bigger the dragon, the more epic the story, and by consequence, the more epic the hero. And if you think about the difference between winners and losers, winners define themselves by what they made happen, and losers define themselves by what happened to them. And the difficult part of the lonely chapter is that the Rocky cutscene lasts 90 seconds in the movie and lasts 5 years in reality.
With no promise of it ever ending. No guarantee of glory.
What's interesting about, and I don't like using the word psychology, but I'll say what's interesting about humans is that our ability to endure is very robust if we know that we'll make it out. And so they've done mice studies where they drop the mouse in and then they let it drown and it drowns really fast. And then they drop a mouse in, and then before it gets to the point where it drowns, they pick it up and then they put it back in. And the second time they put it in, it can last like 20 times longer.
I think for the stats is something around will drown in less than an hour. If it's taken out, dried off, and allowed to relax, it'll swim for a day.
An absurd amount different. And so if I were to say, hey, I need you to hold your breath, but I don't tell you how long, 20 seconds in, you might be thinking, this is stupid. Is he going to stop? Is he going to wait for me to pass out? And all these stupid thoughts go into your mind. But if I say, I need you to hold your breath for 3 minutes, your lungs might burn, but you can see that there's this end that's coming. The difficulty with personal development and entrepreneurship is that you don't know when the end is coming, but you still need to fight like the second mouse who gets out, gets dried off, and gets put back in. And the only certainty that I can give you is that it's the same thing that every other mouse, every other person who got through that period went through. And you won't die. And if you do die, you won't care because you'll be dead. And so, best case, you win. Worst case, it won't matter.
It's the same mentality. It's the same reason why Uber works. The reason that Uber works is partly because you can get a car from anywhere, but the real reason is that you know when the car's going to arrive.
Mm.
You know, remember back in the day, you'd ring a taxi and then just wait. And you go, well, I mean, he's some far away. I don't know how far away. And then it ends up coming along. But we've mentioned it a couple of times today. A frame that I've used an awful lot over the last year or so is this is the price of doing business.
Mm.
So reframing things from bugs to features.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you need to get into one of my nightclubs 10 years ago, there's an entry fee at the door.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the cost of doing business. I remember Facebook got the biggest fine in tech history, maybe 10 years ago or something like that. And they fined some obscene number, so absolutely huge number. And somebody worked it out that it was like half of 1/4 of one territory's profit. And you think, well, I'm aware that in sort of absolute terms, this is a massive number, but in relative terms, they can just go, okay, well, we'll just factor this into the P&L and go through this. So thinking about the byproduct of things that other people see as a luxury that you have, reduction of privacy that comes along perhaps with increasing the size of your platform. And you go, okay, well, I can shout and scream and rail against this. People saying must be nice. You know, that's a good one. Fucking hell, that's a difficult one. I'm going to get people saying must be nice because I just got a promotion at work. And that's unfair because I worked hard for that. And I want them to say to me, well done. I know that you probably went through tons of hardship that I didn't see. Or, wow, you've really changed the texture of your mind due to all of that meditation that you did. I'm sure that 500 mornings in a row sat on a cushion in your bedroom in buttfuck nowhere, listening to Sam Harris speak in your ears was really, really tough. They're not going to say that. They're going to say, well, I mean, it's all right for you, man. You just don't seem to get angry that easily. And you go, dude, you know fucking nothing about me. You have no idea how hard it was for me to get from where I was to where I am now. But instead of seeing that as, you cannot change what other people are going to say, because that is the natural human response to minimize progress that other people have made in order to shorten the gap between you and them. Because if it's due to hard work, that's something that they could have done. If it's due to natural innate talent or genetic predisposition, that's something that they have no control over. So it shortens the gap of work and worth between you and them. So instead of seeing it as, oh my God, this is malignant and a personal curse and so fucking unfair, you just go, this is the price of doing business. If I want to be a mindful person, people are going to say to me, dude, you just seem so calm all the time. I wish I was like you. I wish I was built like you, but you know, I just had too hard of a childhood. Or, dude, you're doing so well at work. I wish that I didn't have the kids, or I didn't have those restrictions, or that my parents had taught me more about business. It's just the price of doing business.
You know, a fun frame with that is when someone says, must be nice, you can just say, yeah, it is. Or someone says, man, you must have exceptional genetics to have the body you have, and it just happens so easily for you. And you're like, yeah, it's sweet. And the thing is that if we were to just say, like, if we lean into it, right, to some degree, by leaning into it, you also eliminate a competitor, if you want to hear my ugly side. Because if I just affirm the fact that they think it happened overnight, or that it was genetic or whatever,
makes it more out of reach.
Right.
Yeah. I've thought about this. So this is such a good point. Such a good point. That somebody telling you, going David Goggins mode, and somebody saying, this is how hard I had to work to achieve this thing. Look at how hard I had to go through, and look at all of the setbacks I had, and look at just how in the red I was before I got to the black, before I got to the green. Just look at all of these things. People see that as a threat. People see that as a humble brag. But what it is a treasure map. This is where I was, and this is where I went. And me, with all of my inefficiencies and deficiencies and setbacks, got from there to here. You aren't even as far into the red as I was. So all of the talk, I understand why hustle porn kind of gets a cringe pushback from the world. But what it actually should be is an unbelievably empowering message that anybody can get from wherever they are to wherever you are. The much more disempowering one was, yeah, man, it just comes to me easily. So yeah, if you really want to fuck somebody up, tell them that it's ineffable. Tell them that it's ethereal and astral and you can't get here.
One of my favorite ways to help someone overcome an excuse or a limiting belief is to tell them I believe them. And so if I'm like, hey, why don't you double your prices? And then they give 4 reasons why they can't double their prices. And then I'll say, then you'll fail forever. And then they're like, well, no, because X, Y, and Z. And it's like, great. Glad we got there.
That's like your thing about only one person can be in the angry boat.
Yeah.
One person can only be in the negative boat.
Yeah. It's unbelievable how powerful that is. What's interesting about a lot of the discontent that we have around how people judge our success or achievement is that we have this unspoken demand that they have a visceral understanding of everything that we went through without having been there. And the problem with that is that if they understood everything, then they would have a complete understanding of how to do it themselves. And so it's making an impossible demand of strangers to somehow be successful already so that they can appreciate our success.
And also removing your competitive advantage.
And so it's interesting, this is just for everyone who's listening, is that, Chris, you can probably attest to this, is that of the people that I've met in my life who've been extremely successful at any endeavor, there's this kind of, and I want to make a video about this, but it's what people say in the back room. And there are these common things that we say to one another that other people wouldn't believe. So we're like, they just don't get how much actual work it is to do a podcast like this. Like, you don't actually get that what 100 hours of preparation for one 1-hour event looks like. You can understand it conceptually, but when you actually set a timer and you only use that timer and you pause it when you stop working and you do 100 hours of work, all of a sudden by the end of that 100 hours, you have a very different understanding to the very granular level of what it takes to be great at anything. And that's 100 hours, not 10,000 hours, but 100 hours with feedback. And so everyone's like in the back room, they want this magic pill. They want to know the secret, but there is no secret. It's just hard work. But I think the thing that everyone who's listening lacks is the context on how hard work is, not in that it's complex, but just in that it's a continuous and unending focus on one thing and noticing the details that separate mediocrity from greatness. And if you're like, I don't know what the difference between those two things is, that is the opportunity that hard work reveals, is that it takes watching 10 hours of you presenting and then taking notes at every time that you say, or that a transition between slides is unclean, or that the audience kind of gets lost there because I can see that there's no reactions to that. I should probably add a visual there. And then when you go slide by slide, realizing that, okay, I can put 1,000 slides together for 90 minutes of presenting if I really put one thought with one visual per slide. And every one of them, and I love this description, is like a coat of paint. It's like you just put another coat of paint on the skill set or the achievement that you're working towards. And most people expect that the pencil wireframe that they do on their first shot is hard work because that's the hardest they've worked, not the amount of hard work that is required in order to get the level of outcome that they say they want or that they expect. And so there's a divorce in reality because they don't have the context from which to make a judgment because they've never been great at anything. And until you get great, because as soon as you get great at one thing, you realize just the tremendous amount of hours and work that it takes to be great at one thing. And then there's this oh shit moment that I can express personally, which is you realize that there's so few things that you can be great at. And then the discipline comes down to saying, what are the 2 or 3 things that I can be really good at in my life? Because it will take me 5 to 7 years to be exceptional at this one thing. And so like, even like making content, a lot of people see my stuff now, but I just had a friend send me a video that he interviewed me before I made any other videos. And I sent it to my team, and he was like, dude, I watched it. And he was like, and it was you. But then I covered the face, and he was like, I mean, it's your voice, but he's like, your clarity of thinking wasn't there in the way that you articulated. And the thing is it's if to the untrained eye, to a beginner, they look at that video and they look at my current videos and say, I don't get why he blew up because it's the same dude. But the master or the expert level can say, I can give you 100 different things that could have been better about his now or his old videos compared to his now videos. And it's the granularity of that feedback that allows you to see the discrepancy between your current and your desired. And I think that once you actually give yourself the reality glasses, not the woe is me glasses, but think, no, really, if I had to do this, what are all of the things that I would have to improve? Then you see how incredibly long that list is. And then you take this deep breath, and that list is the hard work. It's starting at the top and then wanting to cross the first one off after your first day, but then realizing you still haven't done it well enough to cross it off. And you're like, wait, I have to do another day and I still haven't, quote, made a dent in this list. And then you do it another day and a third day and a fifth day and a fifth week. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I think I've got the first one done. And then you still look at this list, but along the way of doing that first one, you realize 20 other things that you could add to that list.
For every one that you cross off, you create 10 more because you start to win in the weeds. You start to look at a higher resolution.
And that's the never-ending cycle of excellence.
It makes great things seem closer than you thought and further than you thought at the same time.
100%.